You're listening to another episode of Battles with Bits of Rubber. This is the podcast about making prosthetics.
I just bought the digital version of 1917.
Oh, wow.
So I can watch it on Amazon Prime.
Oh, fantastic. I saw that in cinema with the boys. It was, it was pretty good. It was pretty good. It was exhausting, actually, because it seems to be a little one take. It's quite an impressive story. Yeah, I loved it. Yeah, not a fun show.
I'm looking forward to watching it. No, not a fun movie. World War I was not a load of laughs.
No, but as a movie, it was quite an experience. It was very, very cool. So yeah, fair play to all those involved. And Tristan Veslaus's team, they had a whole bunch of really cool bodies and stuff in there, which was nice.
The bodies I've seen posted on Instagram were like, geez, these are incredible.
Yeah, there's one thing in it. Have you seen it yet? You've seen the movie?
No, not yet.
Okay, there's one scene in particular which it's no spoiler to say that a guy gets shot and dies, but there's a scene you watch it because this is all sort of in one take, the whole thing. You see him go pale over the duration of the shot, and I'd like to look into that a bit more because that is incredibly clever. I think it's not over the top; it's quite subtle, but you can see him go into shock and his colour changes as he kind of goes pale and pasty, and it's quite impressive because obviously that's not something as makeup artists you've ever had to do before. You never had to make someone change, really in the shot because you can't, not easily. Do you know what I mean? I know there are some tricks you could do with lighting and all that kind of stuff, but actually to have,
I'm wondering if it was digital.
Oh, I suspect it was, but that's what I'm saying. It's quite interesting that kind of has to be digital. And it kind of leads on to a little bit what we were saying before about, learning ZBrush as a sculptor and being driven by the desire to render something. And then when ZBrush or a digital process comes along, you really kind of want to, should know how to use it because who better to use it than someone that already sculpts? So, right. It's a magical thing. And I think it's the same with makeup. It's like if there's a thing that can't really be done with makeup in the way that it needs to be done, doing it digitally, it's necessary, but who better to do it than a makeup artist that would otherwise use the same things at their disposal, but this is moving through time and changing, before our eyes. I don't want the digital guys to have it all. So I'm saying I want it to be makeup artists that the digital
I think
stuff,
that leads right into part of what we're going to be talking about in this podcast is the more hats you can learn how to wear well, the more valuable you're going to be to your employer.
Yes.
Because even if it's not something you are going to be personally involved with creating, understanding the mechanics of what's involved in getting that created and being able to speak the same language as the guys that are actually going to do it just makes for a smoother pipeline all the way through.
Yeah.
And you just need to be able to do that. I think, being a decent sculptor with real clay is going to make what you're able to do in ZBrush make more sense and vice versa because there's overlap in the process.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think people ask me frequently about, well, what do you think the future of makeup effects is going to be? Is digital going to finally take over, or is makeup effects is practical makeup making a comeback? And I think the answer is that neither is going to go away. They're only going to continue enhancing one another, and the more you are able to do everything under one roof, the better. Like Todd Masters has in-house CGI capabilities as well as the practical effects. So does ADI. So does Spectral Motion. I think K&B is going in that direction. It's just the way it is when CGI and practical effects can work in conjunction with one another, because makeup is only additive, not subtractive, and that's where you've got to have CGI. So if you've got somebody, unless it's a dummy body that's got half the face blown away, you're going to have practical makeup and CGI to make it all work. A perfect example of it is The Mummy, when Arnold Vosloo's character, Imhotep, is regenerating. It was a combination of practical makeup and tracked CGI. With that little scarab comes running up through his neck and into his mouth, and he chomps down on it.
And some of it was pretty badly tracked, to be honest.
Yeah, but still, it was a pretty cool sequence.
Yeah, no, it was very, very cool, and the Two-Face makeup, that Batman movie that had the burnt
Harvey
off.
Dent with
yeah. That was beautiful, actually, for its time. I think that was really, really nicely done. But so there's definitely some kind of way. Anyway, in this episode, we're specifically talking about how do I get work in an effects shop, because that's a question that's come up a lot, and I think it's fair that we address it fully, in a podcast episode at length, because it's a many-faceted question, I think. And Maria Vavana, have I pronounced that? Maria Vavina emailed us in January, and that was, her question. It kind of like crystallized all of it. She basically wrote and said, I'm soon to become a graduate of makeup school. As the day's coming near, I'm more and more aware of just how little we've scratched the surface in prosthetics. I'm curious about your best tips to get into a shop.
Yeah, I think it may, in terms of apprenticeships, I'm not sure that they, exist the way they did in the old days of the Hollywood studio system. You may have a better shot of getting an appointment to one of the military academies than getting an apprenticeship at an effects studio.
Yeah, I think, because the thing is, there were apprentices years ago. I mean, when I was first starting out, I think I was about 14 or 15. I've still got it. I wrote to the BBC because in England that they were the big company that were producing shows, and this would have been 1980, something like that. Oh no, it would have been later than that, 85, 86 maybe. Anyway, they sent me back a leaflet, and it explained about the apprenticeship scheme, and there's obviously like an admissions process to get in, and then once you get in, you would work, but not a lot of money, but you do everything. You did, news presenters, you worked on dramas, you did all sorts of things. So you'd run the whole gamut. But the notion of it was that as an apprentice, you were on the back foot in that you had to cut the mustard. You had to do the job well and maintain your end of the bargain, because you were in the position where if you didn't hold your end up, then basically we'll fire you. So that was
and there were one of 100 people waiting to step right in when you failed.
Yes, whereas nowadays with colleges and schools and stuff, it's a complete reversal of power, in that the people on the course, they've paid their money, so they start on day one owed. And I'm not criticising that. I'm just saying it's a different system. So it seemed like the people that were makeup artists then really earned their stripes before they were in a position where they would think of themselves as someone ready to be hired. Whereas nowadays, I've seen people go, well, I've done a course. And it's like, yeah, but you're useless. You didn't turn up. You couldn't be bothered. But because they paid the money, it was almost like it was transactional. It was like, well, I paid the money, so therefore I'm now
What's that sense of entitlement?
Yes, which, if you've worked hard, then you owe it.
Misguided.
Yeah, so it's a weird one, but it's just knowing. I think it's knowing off the front end, like you say, that apprenticeships, they're not something that happen really. It's a difficult one because it seems like a nice exchange. It's like if I just rock up and do whatever, I can sweep up, I can do this, I can do that. That's not necessarily. Anyway, we'll get to that because I've got a list of points that we chatted about, and we're going back and forth. We'll go through them. So point one. Was how much to charge. Like, if you want to get work, how much should you charge? How much do people? Because it's quite a a private thing, isn't it, to talk about money and how much you might get and how much somebody else might get, and
sure,
and all that kind of stuff. So it's how much you charge. And one of the things I think when you get a job is obviously you've got to know. I mean, there are, like in the UK, there are like, you know, there are you know, if you go to the unions, you'll see
there are set wages.
There are set rates, you know. So you're looking at. I mean, to answer the question, how much to charge, how much do people get paid? As a rough guide, I think when you're starting out, you might get between sort of £500 to £800 a week, you know, for a 5-day week. But those days could be long. I don't really know of many places that work on an hourly
that translates, rate. Yeah, and it's based usually on an 8 to 10 hour day, which, you know, depending on where you are, which.
So maybe if you're doing a 50-hour week, that's a straight £10 an hour, which doesn't sound like a lot of money at all. But that's because you're possibly, you know, you're getting your training, and you know there's some kind of subsidy regards to what you're getting out of it too, kind of thing. I think that's right. Why you get a shitty end of that deal. Plus, as well, to be honest, it's what you might be worth, because the thing is, you might want more, but are you going to make more money by getting paid more? Because if you're just cleaning out molds, there's only so well you can do it. You know what I mean? So it's like there's a limit to how much
you got to be realistic about what your worth is.
Yeah, and obviously if you go, you know, more senior and you get more talented at certain things, because you might throw, you know, 20 people into a job, and 5 years later, 2 of them are going to be running departments. You know, 5 of them might be more senior, and a couple of them won't have really progressed that far, just because that's the way the world works. Not everyone comes out the gate, you know, hungry and eager and more successful. There are people I started out with who are doing far better than me now, because that's the kind of people they are, and they're just built for that kind of stuff, and that's fantastic. That's how it should be. So not everything is formed equally, you know. And it's interesting when you come out of makeup school, if you're working with people, you know, as time rolls by, you'll see certain people just start to sort of elevate through, you know, just the way things are, and it's like it can be frustrating and upsetting if that's not you, but it's like, well, it's just
well, there's an unbreakable rule that says life's not fair.
Yes. You just got to get a helmet and carry on. But you still got to do your best.
Suck it up, Nancy.
Yeah,
absolutely.
You know, it is tough. But in episode 13 of our podcast, Halloween, Harm and Rubber Chickens, if you scroll to about 46 minutes in, we were talking about how to figure out your worth. Because basically, obviously, you've got to know how much you're going to charge, and people worry about how much to charge, and that weird secret thing of nobody really discussing openly what they get paid. So if no one's telling you, how can you figure it out? So we came up with a kind of a formula where you basically add up all your expenses for a year, how much it costs to stand still and do nothing, how much does your rent cost, your insurance, your house, home.
And you got to think about everything.
Your materials, how much does it cost to eat, and, you know, how run your phone, your computer, your, you know, all your, what's the word I'm trying to find?
How many nitrile gloves do you go through?
Utilities. How many what? Sorry, nitrile gloves.
Yeah. Nitrile gloves.
Yeah, this year a lot more than normal.
All of that, a lot more. Yeah, but all of that adds up.
Yeah, so you need to add all that up for a year and then divide it by 365, and that number is how much it costs for you to stand still for a day. And so it's like if you can't at least make that, and it was more to do with when jobs say, "Oh, can you do this for free?" and you kind of go, well, "No, I can't do it for free, and here's why not: because it cost me £56 to do nothing and stand still for a day. So if I have to come to you and spend a day working for you, if you can't cover that, at least there's no point in me doing it. I've gained nothing. It's cost me money to come to you." So, you know, there's.
I've taken gigs where I will break even on it, but I won't take a job where I'm going to lose money.
No. And it might be that there are some benefits to doing jobs for free, or for helping out, or for less than you would like. And sometimes,
but they should be few and far between.
They are few and far between, yeah. But also you've got to figure out. I mean, I've done jobs for friends or people who became friends who needed something for not a lot of money, and it worked out really well in that we're still doing stuff now. So in the long run, it was worth doing. But you can't know that on the first meet whether or not you're going to be working with these people 10 years hence. So. I was listening to the Chet Zar podcast. Have you listened to that? The Dark Art Society podcast. Which is really fucking good.
No,
you should listen to that if you haven't. It's amazing.
Yeah, okay.
And a couple of episodes back, he was talking to Steve Wang, and Steve Wang was saying about how he'd done some sculpture. He done like a statue for somebody, and it was a low budget thing, and he ended up basically having to work, I think, for like a month on it for free. They had enough money to cover materials and a little bit of labour, but he enjoyed it, and it was like a taxing thing. And he got 2 of these other movies came along, and he turned them down because he really wanted to, test himself and push himself to do this. And I think like 18 years later, he's still doing stuff for them. And it's like, so that was a worthy investment. Yeah. But you'll probably like he'll have worked for people that screwed him over, or you didn't get a great. So it's one of those things where you can't know in advance for sure if everything you're going to do is pay off. Like I've worked on shows what were paying and then they went under and then I got nothing. So nothing's guaranteed. So it's a scary thing. But yeah, thinking about how much to charge is a thing.
Anything, if you answer an advert that says, deferred payment, that means working for free, because
yes,
there's never a deferred payment.
No, because the effort isn't deferred. So what should the payment be?
Yeah, I don't know anyone who's ever gotten paid down the road.
No.
We'll give you points on the back end.
No. Yeah, it's not happening.
Sound of crickets.
Yeah, I mean, people will cite, oh yeah, but that's what Alec Guinness did for Star Wars, whatever, and look how much money. It's like, yeah, but everything's going to be I've rarely worked on anything that was. Most of the shows I've worked on, if you run through my IMDb, you know what I mean. Like most of the shows I've worked on, they're okay, but they're like you couldn't dine out because you worked on that movie. Do you know what I mean? It's not like, oh, I did this. Right. Oh, really? I'll have your bill for free. It's like you have to pay your bill like everybody else. So
here's a French fry.
Tell me another. So you've got to know how much to charge, and that's what I'm saying. There are rates. Look up rate cards to see what you're getting. And like I say, I think like top jobs, you're probably looking at more, maybe £1,000 to £1,500 a week, maybe more, depending on how senior you are.
Which translates. Yeah, and that translates. It's $1,200 to $1,800. It is. On the high side is like $36 an hour.
Yeah, and I'm talking like high end jobs. I'm not talking about most jobs.
Still not. Yeah. It's better than a kick in the nuts.
It is, but it's not. It's not for most people doing this. It's not a lucrative job at all, and you should know that going in. And the work is.
Yeah, it's a lot of hard work for decent money, but not great money.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the things as well.
I'm thinking if you're going into this business to make money, to have that Malibu beach house and a fleet of Range Rovers, you're looking in the wrong direction.
I mean, I'm not saying there aren't people that have done that. I mean, you're looking at like the Stan Winston sort of work, but most people don't do anything like that. It's just they're more. I think they're just happier that they're doing something that they care about and love more than the money it makes. You know what I mean? So, yeah, you should know that going in.
It's like nobody goes into theater for the money.
No, definitely not theater.
So we do it because we love it and because we can't not do it.
Mm-hmm.
How many times have you heard me say that before?
A few, but it stands true. It's a good point. Point number 2. I've written these as sort of headings just to remind me. Point number 2: the film industry isn't looking to take you on and train you. It doesn't need another mouth to feed, which sounds really brutal. But what I mean by that is, the film industry is a machine, and it's not looking for someone to look after. So rocking up and saying, "Oh, I'll do this so you can train me." That's not a good sort of approach, because no one's looking for somebody to train. If you're on a film, if you're on a production, you need people to help. It would be like being in an emergency room with loads of people covered in blood and screaming, and then you rocking up saying, "Oh, can you show me how to help people?" It's like, now is not the time. Do you know what I mean? It's like, now is the worst time.
Yeah.
You do need the help, but right now I haven't got the time to train you. So, you know what I mean? If you're not a medic, you shouldn't be here. That kind of thing. So it's kind of like, it's a difficult one. Because the film industry isn't a single entity. It's a mass of small companies and individuals and private interests all kind of competing. So the industry itself as a thing is not looking for you.
It's kind of a catch-22, because you can't get a job without experience, and you can't get the experience without having a job. which is why, if somebody's going to hire you, they're looking for self-starters, for people who are ambitious and motivated. So you need to go out and learn how to do as much of this stuff on your own as possible beforehand, whether it's YouTube tutorials or doing, taking some of Neil's online courses, or doing the Dick Smith course, or reading my book and doing everything in the book, or following your tutorials. Something that says, hey, I'm willing to do what it takes to get my foot in the door here.
Yeah, and you've obviously got to balance that with, like, you can't destroy yourself over it, but it leads me on to point number 3, which is waiting to be picked. If somebody says they want to do something, well, then there needs to be evidence that they've tried, because the amount, like, for example, if you said you wanted to be a chef and you haven't cooked anything yet because no one supplied you with a fully stocked professional kitchen, I wouldn't take your request that you wanted to be a chef seriously. I would have expected you to have tried to make things with whatever you had and push that as far as you can before. Do you know what I mean? So if you haven't done that, you don't really want to be a chef, do you? You just like the idea of it.
Problem solving too.
Yes. So it's showing evidence of your desire to work. I think that's the thing. You need to give your practice. You need to display your journey to somebody else. I mean, the people you're trying to work for are like that, and they know their own kind. So if you want to do it for a living, you should be doing it too. You need to be able to rock up, And I think Neil mentioned this ages ago. We were chatting about stuff like, if someone rocks up with a folio full of terrible sculpts, but they've got lots of them. Do you know what I mean? It's kind of like they're enthusiastic. They will get better. Then that's much better than someone who's just done two or three derivative things over the last 5 years. It's like, well, in what way are you obsessed with this? And why do you want it? You haven't proved to me that you care about it that much to do it more than a couple of times. So, you've got to not necessarily wait to be picked. I think you've got to go and make things yourself. Even if it's even if you sculpt something and just paint it, you don't have to mold it and cast it and apply it necessarily. You just got to, if you've got this stuff, like you said, if you can't not do it, if it's inside you and you've got to get it out in order to function, then there should be evidence of that in some way, even if it's drawings, paintings, designs, anything. Because if you're not doing that for fun in your spare time, you should know your competition is. So, on what basis?
Well, if it was easy, anybody could do it.
Yes, it's not.
It's not easy. It's not supposed to be easy. So, you got to be prepared to do what it takes to make your career happen. If this has been a dream since you were a kid, then you've, we're directing this more at people who have a desire to do it, but maybe aren't as driven as some people, and need a little guidance in which direction to look to get the knowledge and experience you need to have a career in this business. Yeah,
it's a weird one, because not everybody is going to have the same opportunities and the same luck, and that is, it comes back to life's not fair kind of thing. But you can certainly leverage your opportunities or the increased likelihood of opportunities by having a body of work you're working towards. And at the end of the day, like I'm not going to get hired to be a digital sculptor, right? There's no way, because when you look at Pixelogic's ZBrush or ZBrush Central, the sculptures that are already being done by people is far superior probably than I'll ever be able to be, right? And those people are already out there available.
Yeah.
So
you and me both.
Exactly. So on what basis am I continuing to learn ZBrush? Well, it's because I really like sculpting. It's been a big part of my life. I have been lucky enough to do it professionally, and I've cut my chops on, proper jobs. But at the same time, I still love sculpting, even if it's just for me. So I'm kind of learning it because it's another tool. Do you know what I mean? It's another way of being able to express myself and get satisfaction from that.
It's just going to make your practical sculpture get better.
Well, I hope so. It'd be good, but I still do it. I have no intention of showing up, to Ironhead Studios and try and get a job with it, because I know I'm not going to be good enough. But that doesn't matter. I'm still interested in being able to do it. And I think competence is never wasted. It's always a good thing to have, just for your own sanity as well. to be able to overcome
Agreed.
something and do it. So it's very good. So you shouldn't wait to be picked before you start making things. You know, I don't think it's good enough to say, well, no one's given me a job, so I don't have a folio. I think that's a really crap excuse, because you can have a folio of stuff you can do, and if you haven't been able to figure out how to do anything, then you're seriously not going to be more impressive than the people with folios that have, because that's what we need. Going to whine and find excuses. What's going to happen when my back's turned on a job? Do you know what I mean? I can't fucking trust you to get on. I know you're just going to be like, well, the thing was locked, we ran out of this, or whatever. There'll be some excuse you're attaching the laziness to and hiding behind, and it's like, that's fucking, no one wants that, you know.
Well, doing something is better than doing nothing.
Yeah.
Even if that something sucks.
Yeah.
Do it. Don't wait for somebody to come say, "Hey, I hear you're looking for somebody to teach you how to be a better sculptor."
Yeah.
It's not going to happen.
Yeah.
You got to go out and make it happen on your own.
It's one of those things where you see it a lot on social media as well, where like someone will post a couple of pictures, and then, you know, their auntie will say how good it is, and da-da-da. And I'm not saying the work isn't good. What I'm saying is, once you've done good work, do more good work and keep doing good work. Don't, like, once you've heard a few nice things, kind of step back. I mean, you see it on, you know, and we laugh at these programs, on these like talent show programs like the X Factor, where someone goes up and then like they'll sing and they're awful, and then Simon Cowell will go, "You're shit, what are you doing here, go away," and then they burst into tears because for the first time someone said that's fucking appalling. Do you know what I mean? And no one's done them any service by withholding that information. Yeah, you can sugarcoat it, maybe don't be so mean, but ultimately you need to know that you can't sing, or the people above you who are next can sing beautifully. So if you can't be as good as that, who would you pick if you were the producer? You know what I mean? So it's really harsh, but it's like, it's the difference between working for a living or being very good at it, but it's your hobby. And there's nothing wrong with either of those things. And to be honest, my interest nowadays is more the craft of it. But this question is specifically about getting work, so I just want to get these things out just so that people are clear. You know, once people start paying you, they've got something on you. So they're not looking to fix your problems. They want you to fix their problems. So you kind of have to arrive fully formed and without too much neuroses. Otherwise, you're not going to be a benefit to anyone. You're going to be a burden to somebody, and they don't want more burdens. They've already got enough.
Yep, totally.
Vicious, but I'm just being honest. Which leads me on to question 4. Question 4, point number 4, awareness of the state of the industry. A lot of people are sort of training to do something, but I wonder how much they actually know about the industry. Do they know about the types of jobs? Do they know how the jobs work in the current state? Because it's quite difficult to know how things are made unless you spent time around it. But also just knowing about like current artist names and credits.
Which I think that's huge. You know, the history of the industry, as well as the pioneers and, you know, the guys who came before and paved the way for the current superstars in the business. And, you know, I've got students that don't know maybe one or two names. You know, they've heard the name Rick Baker. They might know V. Neil from Face Off. Maybe they've heard of Dick Smith, but they don't know who the hell Jack Pierce was, or you know, any of the greats back in the day. You know, who's Michael Westmore? Who's John Chambers? You know, what movies did they work on? Knowing all this stuff. I mean, even if you know, knowing B movies. You know, you don't have to know just the American Werewolf in London for the effects in that, or The Hunger, or other pictures. You know, look at some of the stuff from the 50s, like Manster, which I don't know if you've ever seen that, but you've got to be a lover of the history as well as the craft of actually getting your clay under your fingernails. It's, you know, it's kind of an all or nothing thing. You need to be well rounded in what the business is about.
Yeah, you do. Because you do need to know, like you say, these people, but you also need to know who's working currently and how good they are, and and what can you do to improve. Literally, what can you do? Do you need to take life drawing classes or sculpting class or whatever? Because if you got to figure out what your shortcomings are and how you can work on those. Because if you're not as good as the people who are really good, then obviously the only way to get better is practice. But if no one's giving you the work, how can you practice? That's what I'm saying. You've got to try and come up with things that don't break the bank but are practical. We talked a little bit about this with Neil about what's cheap ways of improving and doing like self-portraits with clay, or just light and shadow stuff with just a paintbrush, and some grease paints. It's like keep it simple, but keep doing stuff and pushing yourself and photographing it and showing people and getting honest criticism and working on it, because that's another thing as well. Like when I've done it myself, where someone will email me with a question, and sometimes I had one this week and it was just like the laziest fucking question. Do you know what I mean? Like it wasn't clear what the question was, and when you ask them, they're like, I don't know, just to do or the question starts like dear everyone or hi everyone. It's like that kind of stuff. It's like and I can't...
I tried to find this. I tried to find this letter. I have it in my file somewhere. That years ago, back when we were doing our visual effects animation, we would get submissions. A lot of unsolicited submissions, and we got one from someone. It was basically a to whom it may concern, or dear sir / madam thing, but it wasn't even a freshly typed or handwritten letter. It was a Xerox copy of a Xerox copy. I don't know how many times this thing had been photocopied, but it was basically, I really like animation and think it's something I might be good at. Would you consider hiring me? And it's like, oh my God. Not only did this person not bother to do any homework to try to find out who they should address the letter to, but they don't have any experience whatsoever. It's like, I want to be an animator because I like to watch cartoons.
Yeah, it's not quite.
It was just appalling.
Yeah,
and I kept it so I could show people
how not
you
to
get
do.
Something like this, and nobody will hire you. I mean, we would get reels that were just dreadful. We'd get some that were good, and we'd talk to people, and we actually had some people work freelance for us for a while. But I had buddies at effects shops, the CGI shops in LA, who would get reels, and they got way more submissions than we did, because we were basically at our height, we were a 4-man shop. That they would save up all the really, really shitty reels for Friday after work, when they'd have beer and pizza, and they'd watch these crappy reels together and just howl, and then they would send them to their pals at other shops. So not only would the shop they initially sent it to never hire them, everybody's seen it, and nobody would hire them because everybody in town has seen this crap.
Yeah, it's probably quite horrifying for anyone born after 1990 to hear this, but it's like but bad news travels so fast, and it's just one of those things where you could. But this is why you need to. I mean, it's not so much if the work's bad that's the problem. It's more it's the if someone's trying, that's one thing. But if it's like I say, if a hastily and shitty written kind of question is thrown at you, you kind of go, there is no way I'm going to spend an hour and a half like crafting a good response to this. You can't be bothered asking the question. Why should I bother answering it with anything of value? Do you know what I mean? Just that kind of thing. So it's good to know that
we had students getting their demo reels together, and they would have come up with a production company name for themselves that they would put on their demo reels. And I would look at this and go, take that off. You're just graduating from college. you're sending your demo reel, because somebody's going to look at this and go, you already have your own production company. Why the fuck are you looking for a job with me?
I think it's just one of those things that you, like with anything, if you're trying to get work from somebody, you just have to know that people pay to have their problems solved. So if you're not somebody that can solve their problems, or you don't know what problems they have that need solving, you really need to look closely at what you're doing there, what you're trying to get into, because it just seems like, you know, there may be like this kind of imperative to get stuck into something without really knowing what it is you're getting stuck into. And I think it's hard, I think, with this industry, because it's quite, unless you're around it, you don't really know. But I think you do have a duty to sort of seek out what the industry is like and how it works and how you can fit within it, rather than just assume that because you've done a course, the world is going to beat a path to your door, because
sure,
there's lots of people just like you who, and no one's doing that. People are not, like, if I need someone, I'm not going to go, oh my God, I need a makeup artist. Where am I going to find a makeup? I know fucking makeup. I know lots of makeup artists. And naturally, like anybody else, I'm going to go through a Rolodeck in my head of who I really like. And I will have constructed a hierarchical order based on the people I like most, and I work down from there. So it's not like,
yeah,
do you know what I mean? People aren't
absolutely.
scratching their heads wondering, and it's just a realistic kind of way of looking at things. That's all I'm saying. It's not like, oh, you're a makeup artist? Oh, thank God! I had no way of finding one of these. And it's like it's.
Well, I think that's one of the reasons why it's important to learn how to wear as many hats as possible, so you can help problem solve. You know, the more value you can offer somebody by having some ability in different areas, it's going to be valuable. It's like, you know, hiring somebody or having somebody around who is likable and willing to learn, even if they don't know everything. They know something, but they don't know everything. Mm-hmm. I think is much more desirable than having somebody who's got skill sets that are off the chart, but has a real attitude and lets you know how great they are.
Yeah, they make the spotlight on themselves all the time. Yeah, it's a
I
weird
think
one,
the day you think you know everything, you're finished.
Yeah, I think in the first instance, punctuality and politeness and enthusiasm go a long way, and maintaining that enthusiasm over the duration of the job as well. Plenty of people start on day one enthusiastic, but whether you're enthusiastic, that's the people you want around you. And when you've been around people like that, you know, it's like, holy shit, there are people I can count on that I know they're going to be 100% no matter what, because they care about this more than anything else, and they're going to solve your problems, and that's who you want around you, you know? So you need to be that for somebody else. You need to be that somebody that when you roll up, somebody goes, oh, thank fuck, it's you. I'm so pleased. And I've got people that I've worked with and I've had on that I would, in a heartbeat, I'm like, I'm going to get David Brown in, or I'm going to get, you know, James Adams, or they're just people I just know that I can just count on, and they'll do it because they can. And if there's a problem, they'll let me know. I won't just find out. Do you know what I mean? Because it's under, you know, they've stuck something that fucked up under a bush somewhere, and I'm like, what is this? It's like, you know, it's just. It's having these people you can count on, and it's trying to make sure that you are that for somebody else. And you know, because ultimately, the way I think of it is like, if you were going to have surgery, you would want to know the person doing the surgery was the most competent person in the room. You know, who was really good, that aced their class, that have been loads of experience, and that's the or if you had a
didn't
pilot.
buy the answers to the exam.
Exactly, you wouldn't want someone that's scraped in by the skin of their teeth. You know, you'd want to know that the person doing the surgery was the best person for the job, and that would make you feel more relaxed. And it's kind of like, I'm not a surgeon, we're not doing anything that important. I'm just saying you want to be like that for somebody else in whatever it is you end up doing. I think you want to try and be that person. So, you know, when they find out it's you, they're like,
be known as the go-to guy.
Yeah, just be competent. And that means, you know, dedicating a lot of time, putting the hours in. But I think you do need to find out about how the industry works, so that you can make sure you're training for the right things, because otherwise you might get really good at something and find out that's not necessary, or worse still, you've plowed a lot of effort into something at the expense of other things, and it never occurred to you that, learning Photoshop we didn't do that at college. It's like, well, that's a big deal, or whatever. It's just like it's a simple thing like that. It's talk to people, and there's no reason now with forums and this podcast and the magazines and the trade shows. Go up to these people, ask, keep a record, and find out, how it goes and how you could fit into it. Because if you're just sort of blindly learning something in the belief that it'll be the thing that people want, you might find out the hard way that what you do or what you've been told is not what people are looking for or paying for. So do the homework and make sure.
Yeah, do the research. The information's out there.
Yeah, it's important to do that. Number 5 I put as ability levels. Are you an asset or a burden, like I say? And that kind of ties in a bit with the whole, people saying, "Oh, can you take me on and train me, and I'll shadow you and watch this kind of stuff." It's like there are rarely occasions where that works out. I think because when people offer themselves up, in their head they're thinking this is a fair exchange. You need tea made, you need bins emptied, you need the floor swept. Well, I can do that and learn at the same time, but at the same time, it's hard to find someone that's going to spend their time showing you stuff and then you bugger off and work somewhere else. Or do you know what I mean? You end up subsidizing their training. So it's kind of like, It was a big thing with plumbers, it was like you could do your training and then you want to train under a plumber, but they'd have to but if I teach you how to do this stuff and show you the inner circle stuff, you're just going to piss off and start up your own company. So what's the imperative for me to sort of constantly have a turnover of people that I'm going to train up from nothing? So it does beg the question, well, how do you get work then? How do you get into it? I'm just saying, be aware that people are not looking to be benevolent and help as many people out as possible, because the people that run these jobs have got tight margins, they've got tight deadlines, there's not a lot of wiggle room. They're not looking, some places do have programs where they help people out and stuff, but on the whole, a lot of people that do this, they're running on very, very slim margins. There's not oodles of space and money and time sloshing around, and they're looking to spend it on, people who want to start. So, you've got to figure out how you can fit into that rather than hope everyone's going to, squat down and pick you up. It's like, actually, you've got to grow tall enough to sort of be of some use to somebody else first.
Oh yeah, no, I get lots of offers from people who want to learn, who have little to no experience and want to come help me. And I don't want to be a dick and say, well, I don't have time to train you or do the job over after you fuck it up. So it's easier for me to do it by myself, even though it might take longer, than to have help from somebody who doesn't know what the hell they're doing, is going to slow me down or make me have to do it all over again.
Yeah. Because that's the kind of...
I'm sure you run into that as well.
Yeah, well, sometimes it's like one of those things, if you're trying to find something, you're looking for something, it's good, where is it? What does it look like? Where did you find it? It's like, once at a time I've explained all this, I might as well just look myself. Do you know what I mean? It's that kind of thing. Yeah. It's that analogy, but stretched out over a job. And there are times where, okay, you maybe need... But this is where I'm saying, it's not so much whether you know everything, because obviously you can't know a lot of stuff when you come out of college, but it's whether or not you're the kind of person that sort of has an idea. So if I show you something, it's not like the first time you've ever seen fucking clay, and then when I show you how to, if I show you how to core something out to a specific thickness, after 5 minutes you've got it, and you're the kind of person that can just go with it. And if there's a few small problems, you'll figure them out. You're not the sort of person that would ask no questions at all and continue doing it very wrong for the whole job, and then the whole thing's got to be done again. And similarly, you wouldn't be so without your own senses that you have to ask every 5 seconds what something is, and then you're bugging me, in which case, in what way is this a benefit? Do you know what I mean? You've got to be that kind of person where you're a quick learner, and you sort of know what this is because you've seen it done, so you at least have a sense of what this is for, so you'll do your best. You know what I mean? And even if it's not perfect, it's kind of like, I can see where you're going with it. And that's a hard thing to perfect, but it's just... the whole point I'm trying to get across is you've got to figure out how you can be of use to other people, rather than assuming that everyone is out to be paternal and helpful to you. There are definitely people like that, and there are times where it can be like that, but workshops are not full of oodles of spare time looking for people to pick up and help. And I've heard people say things where I go, wow, you think there's like this whole department of like training that's just on standby, like twiddling their thumbs waiting for a student to plop in from a chute above and like, oh goody, someone else to show. It's like it doesn't work like that. They're like, shit, we've got 20 hours to do a 40-hour job, boom boom boom, let's get this done. So to not have to have somebody else to worry about would be great. So one thing to consider, I was thinking about point number 6 is how busy is the film industry right now. If you're going to show your photo to somebody, if it's too busy, they're not going to be able to see you because they're too busy doing stuff unless they're hiring specifically. But then so you need to kind of know when stuff's really busy so you don't bug them at their most busy times. That's why I think it's important to kind of call on a regular basis and get a feel for when you can keep a track of things.
Yeah, you got to be persistent.
Yeah, I think it's worth being persistent, but not to the point where you're annoying them. But also, I think keep a list. So keep a list of everybody you've called, when you called them, who you spoke to, at what time, and then what did they say. Keep a note
and what you talked about.
Yeah, what you talked about. Keep a list of that. And then when you call them back, you'll remember, because you'll have a list. You'll know when you call them, oh, it's been 6 months since I called this person, so it's all right to call them now rather than call them the next day, because as charming as you may think it isn't to call them. Like, there comes a point where it becomes harassment, and then that's just something you get blocked. But so it's keeping track of them. And also I think writing letters beautifully, I say beautifully, but just well, clean, presented, professional looking CVs and letters, and send those out as well. Not everything should be email, because it's very easy to ignore an email. It's a little harder to ignore a handwritten or signed, at least printed text letter with
that I think that goes a long way to helping you stand out in someone's mind when you take the time to do something a bit more personal, even if it's not handwritten. You'll sign it personally, and try to make it something that's gonna make them wanna meet you.
Yeah, put a bit of effort into it.
You've got to be willing to do something that other people aren't going to be willing to do.
No, I think it's worth spending a bit of time doing that. I think it's worth calling. And one thing that I've noticed, and I think some colleges and some places encourage people to do this, and so that's why I think it's quite common, but I actually think it's quite damaging, is when people come out of college, they'll get a whole bunch of stationery printed up. And they'll have like a logo and everything, and then you open up this CV and it's full of like branded stuff, and it sort of has the sort of the feeling of somebody that's been told to have this corporate identity. I think maybe a card or a simple logo is fine, but if everything just oodles and there's like 15 cards and they've all got calendars on the back, and you know what I mean, like you're a Chinese restaurant or something, it's just like, no, it's just it's weird. It just doesn't. It just, something about it I find is a bit icky. You don't want a fucking leisurewear chain of stuff, when you've just started out. I think that's sad. The best promotional thing I ever got was when I was a creative director, ad agency creative director here years ago, and I got a package from a photographer. It was 3 homing pigeons, and with the banded things on the legs, and where you can put a note. And he wanted to send his portfolio, and I said, pick one of the. Yes, I'd love to see your work. No, we're not interested. And I can't remember what the last one was. And it was so cool. Everybody in the agency, we all went up to the roof with these homing pigeons and let them fly. And I called this guy in to see his portfolio and actually hired him for a gig because it stood out so fantastically from all the other postcards and stuff we got from
from photographers wanting
Man, see, nowadays with flash drives,
get gigs.
you could just strap that to a pigeon.
Yeah.
So that's how you get a job. Just get yourself a homing pigeon.
Yeah, it was.
And strap a USB jump drive to the leg of the thing with your folio and send it to the effects shop of your choice.
Yeah, it was pretty awesome.
It's amazing. Oh, I love it. That's very funny. I had like a little article I wrote a while ago. I might upload it to here and put it in with the show notes. But I think having like a schedule of like track down all the people you're going to call, make sure you know their names, and get in touch with them and call them by the right name, and make sure that you know what they're doing, what their position is, and make sure you spelt it correctly, because the amount of times that people spell Neil Gorton's name wrong is like Neil with one L and it's Gordon rather than Gorton, and it's only a small thing and it's an honest mistake, I suppose, but at the same time it just smacks of not really doing your research, which is, you know, strike one if you're trying to get it in the job, is that you don't have an eye for detail. So
my name gets misspelled so much.
Yes, I can imagine. But you know, we have Google.
It's either Todd with one D, or it's not that hard to figure it out.
So it's all worth knowing that from a sender's point of view. But yeah, I think if you keep your, you know, keep a list, keep a document, like maybe even a spreadsheet, and just, you know, all the list of people you're going to talk to, when you spoke to them, what you said to them, and just keep a list so you can kind of build a pattern of when's good to talk to them. Because if
you have to think of it as a business.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, it's a strategy, and then call them. I think, call them, send an email with the resume, and then also maybe a week or two later follow up with a posted one, just snail mail, a hard copy in the post, and then maybe, you know, if you're brave, try and arrange a meeting where you go to them, because that's going to be a little bit more. It's harder for them to know, you know what I mean? Even if you just say, look, I'm going to be in the area. I'm going to be in that area anyway, or near there, so I'd like to swing by. Is that possible? You know, and actually just kind of rock up, you know, arrange it, but maybe try and get a face-to-face meeting, because not everything will be done over the phone. And you can read a lot from people when you meet them, so, you know, that might be good, but it's a little scarier.
Yeah, if it's a shop that's big enough to actually have a dedicated receptionist, get to know the receptionist.
Yeah, because people on reception are used to dealing with people like you. So yeah. I don't mean that in a mean way. I just mean, you know, just learn the names and how to be polite. And it's terrifying, because when you rock up to a studio with your folio, you're about to expose your soul to someone that you feel could make or break you. And it's like there's a lot of, especially when they're not particularly hiring. It's not like they're looking for somebody. You're imposing on them. And you want to show your stuff, and you know, you're hoping that they'll at least give you some pointers and stuff to put you in that way. So I do know that's a scary thing. So that's why you've got to make sure you don't kind of shoot yourself in the foot by spelling their name wrong, or not knowing who it is you're speaking to, or what they've worked on. I mean, if someone rolls up at Neil Gorton's workshop and doesn't know who he is or what he's worked on, you got to know. Again, your competitors do. Like, the next guy is going to come in with a folio and knows exactly who he is and has followed his work for years. So, you know, if you don't or can't bother to find out, then it's not a good start.
No, and being nice to the receptionist when you call, and you know, getting it can be the difference between getting he's not in today, and hang on a second, let me put you through.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly right. Point number 7 is, how close do I live near the work? This is a point I have lifted entirely from my conversation with Neil, because it is a consideration. Obviously, I mean, I've done courses, and you'll have seen this as well. I've seen on forums where people say, I live in, you know, South California, and I want to go up to such and such a place, but it's, you know, it's a long drive. And I'm like, I taught a course in London. Well, one of the first courses I taught, a guy came from Brazil for a 4-day workshop. The first class I did in this workshop here, where I moved to now, the first girl that booked a course came from Israel. It's like, people travel for stuff, and you know, I'm always moved when people get on a plane to come and do a class. So you have to understand that, you know, living near the work, I think, is important, because, I mean, it's not quite the same thing with the training, but the thing is, if two people call you, for a job, and one lives, half an hour away, and someone else says, well, I'm going to need a few days' notice, got to drive down from wherever. It's like, well, you know what I mean? It's like, I'd rather we didn't have that complication between you and the job in case something changes. I don't want to have the extra burden of you being put out. So there is something to be said for being geographically close to where the work is, so that you can be available.
Absolutely.
I think that's just a harsh truth. So if you live nowhere near where they're making stuff, well, you kind of need to move to where the stuff is being made, I think. Even in a world of remote working, there's still a lot that, has to be said
Which
for
this
being
is,
close.
Yeah, well, this is not, sadly, not one of the businesses where working remotely is very doable.
No, you're trying to stick a makeup on an actor. It's I need to be there. But you need to think about it.
The screen keeps getting in the way.
Yeah, well, you need to think about the travel costs, or the cost of accommodation, the loss of income from a job you may have to leave in order to do this, and then just seeing it from the employer's point of view. And the other thing is as well, like, just be sure if you do have to travel, think about language, visa, or immigration issues, because the amount of times where I've had people say that they want to, I can help you out in a job, but can you sort out my paperwork for the visa? I'm like, it's just me, man, in my workshop. It's just I need a couple of people to help. I don't have the spare facility to just run up again. Do you know what I mean? You've got to take care, like your tax situation as well. I'm not your tax office. I need self-employed people that are ready to go. I don't need the extra admin. So know that if you have all this extra hassle and paperwork you're going to put on somebody else, it's something that might work against you. So being available and present for the work is a big part of it too, because otherwise it's like, you're great, but I can't hire you. Number 8 I've written down as luck, because frankly you've got to be at the right place at the right time.
It plays into it for sure.
I mean, I know when I first got my break, I think it was just a luck thing, like anything. I mean, but the harder you work, the more luck you seem to get. But you can't control your employers or their desire to hire you. You can't. You can only do your very best and try and be in the right place at the right time. But there is some element of luck in that. So, you win some, you lose some. So just you've got to maintain your standards and keep your abilities up and keep trying. But you have to
be determined and persistent.
Yeah, persistent is good, but there is luck, and don't take it too hard if something doesn't work out. There's always another show, so there's always something else coming.
Yep, if you didn't win Publishers Clearinghouse this year, there's always next year.
Exactly. There we go. Number 9 we did already, which was people hate a Dear Sir or Madam letter, which is true. It just doesn't look good. I understand the convenience of being able to cut and paste. I'm just saying, hide your tracks. Don't make it obvious that that's what you've done. Number 10, I just want to touch on the point of offering to work for free. If you're going to go up against people who are trying to make a living, there's very few people that are going to think well of that strategy of offering to work for free, because if there's
it's not going to win you any friends.
No, there's going to be an endless supply of people who think it's a viable strategy, but the essence really is to get free training and opportunities in exchange for no pay, I suppose. But the cost of the baby.
Well, the same's true. The same's true for undercutting. If somebody, I can do it cheaper than that. I'll do it for less than that. That's not doing anybody any favors either. What it does is it undermines the industry. It undermines the people working in your market, and it's going to put you on somebody's enemies list.
Yeah, it's not, because eventually you're going to want. Yeah, well, eventually you're going to want to make money doing this, right? Unless you intend to work for free for the rest of your life. So you're going to start resenting it. If you say you work for free for somebody and then they take you on, and then gradually you're going to start getting paid, and over the years you get paid, and then it becomes your main source of income because that's what you do all the time, and then somebody comes in and says, I'll do it for nothing. You wouldn't look very kind on that person, and that's what everyone's trying to do, right? Everyone's trying to make a living doing this. So you do need to get paid. So just be aware. I'm not saying you should never work for free in the sense that I've done stuff for free for friends or for people who had good, honest endeavors.
There has to be a reason for it.
Yeah, what are you going to get? You're going to get something out of it. You're going to get a good opportunity, or some, I hate the word exposure, but a good opportunity that gave me things that I wouldn't have otherwise had, that I chose to do because I wanted what that would provide me. There's something in it for you, but just doing it for no money all the time, that's not. I'm just saying, don't think. To you, it sounds like they'll snap me up because I'm not. I don't want any pay. But I'm just saying that's not a great strategy because of that. And also the other danger, like you were saying there about undercutting. As Seth Godin said, the danger with trying to be the cheapest and race to the bottom is that you might win. You might win. You might be the cheapest,
once you do something cheap or for no money, that's all that employer's going to expect from you.
Yeah, no one's going to start paying you a bunch of money more because you did less. And I had that before with jobs. It was like, oh, we do this for nothing. The next one I'll pay you top dollar. It's like that never works because, if you have top dollar available, you would have had it now. Why this job? So, yeah, taking work for no fee, it's tricky. Because the other thing is as well, I've seen people take on jobs, or they were doing they want something doing, and this isn't so much about getting work for an employer. This is more about people who want to have something made, and so they come to you for the work, and they'll say they got no money. And it's like, well, if you have got no money, then you don't really have a business. I mean, I'd love to go into a restaurant, fill up and have 3-course meal and drink loads of beer and say, do you know what, it would really help me out if I didn't have to pay for that. It's like, that's not how a business works. You're not there. So you're not there as a makeup artist to subsidize and finance that production. If you do that, you're now a producer. You know what I mean? So be wary of that. I think maybe, you can do things for free or for friends, or maybe 1 or 2 jobs because you get good experience or a folio building, but you got to limit those jobs and be wary of taking a paying job away from someone by offering to work for free, because I think it's a bad strategy. Because the other thing is, well, you're going to be working with other
strategy.
Yeah, you're going to be working with people who eventually are going to become people who hire. I've worked with a lot of people who are now running jobs. 10, 20 years later, they're now running things, and they remember the people that screwed them over. So it's not a good thing if you want to be around doing this for a while. Point number 11.
Agreed.
Point number 11. Is understanding about the securities, NDAs, and the outsider risk, which is a relatively new phenomenon. It didn't affect me, when we were starting out. But imagine you go to a workshop and, no one asks you to sign anything. This is what the production are worried about. Say you're doing Game of Thrones, and then, maybe a character comes back from the previous series, they died, and then, there you are sculpting their body or something in this new series, and everyone's like, oh, that character comes back, oh, that must be. So you take photos, and then you leave your phone on the bus, or it gets stolen, and then the next thing you know, it's in the papers, and then HBO are like, what the fuck, how did this get out? You know what I mean? So basically, because of the ease of transmitting information, a lot of productions now are really, really tight on non-disclosure agreements or NDAs, where basically they don't just let people in and out easily like they used to. So just be aware. People are wary about having people just pop to the workshop. It used to be something we could do, but now it's tricky. You can imagine things like Star Wars. No one was just popping in. You know what I mean? They had days where they would let family in, and it was all prearranged because it was such a big show and people were working on it for years. But you don't just rock up, helping out. So that is another factor that is going to make it harder for you to just pop in. It's, there's admin for somebody for you to do that. When we popped to Frank Ippolito's place, you remember they had like an iPad ready to go. Just to even get in the building, you just sign an NDA because there's all this really cool stuff going on. You don't talk about it. That's a necessary evil. That's just how the world works now.
That was actually a pretty cool way they had to, it's like a handprint kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it needs it for those kind of level of jobs. And I think that's fantastic. But the other point about security. The other point about security I want to make is that if you're going to try and get work from someone, just ask yourself, can you be trusted, or do you have a history of revealing every facet of your life online? Because if I'm an employer, if I see that you blab about every injustice that's ever happened to you online, then as someone who may have to tell you stuff or be mean to you or chase you up for a job and get your stuff done, I'm going to wonder if you're going to hate on me publicly. And it might not be a good quality to have. Discretion is a desirable quality. So outside of the NDA security thing, just think about your own conduct online and how you present, because I know there's quite a few people on Facebook I've just stopped following or unfriended, because every single thing they say is just bitching and moaning and negative, and it's just like, and then you'll see a post saying...
That's why I left Facebook altogether.
Yeah, just had too much of it. Yeah. Just negative. Just all the time negative. And then they were like, oh, I need to work. It's like, oh, I'm not fucking surprised. Point number 12.
No names.
No. Point number 12. The union. Is there a union where you're working? Is the union control the work where you... are you permitted? In England, we have Bectu. And it doesn't have any teeth. I've still got somewhere, when I was clearing out, I've still got it somewhere, my contract from Gladiator, right? And in that contract, it says, if you want to work on this production, you basically waive any rights or benefits you have from any union or governing body or trade union that you are affiliated with. It actually has that in the contract. And I remember thinking at the time, oh, this is bullshit. Now, that wouldn't truck at IATSE, I'm sure. But
no, not a chance.
And I'm sure maybe Bectu, but I'm kind of thinking you got Universal Pictures and you got Bectu. And I'm like, are they going to... I don't know. I just can't see them having enough teeth. It's not a union in the same way that IATSE is a union, I don't think. It seems to me... it's sort of like it pays lip service to what a union can be, but it doesn't seem to get stuff shut down because it's not, the production's not pulling its weight. And if it did, I over here, they would just navigate around it. I think they just hire different people. So it's not a suit of armour that you can wear to protect yourself in the same way. So I was annoyed that happened, on Gladiator. But I was starting out, so I was happy for the work, and I was young enough and had, few enough commitments that if I had to work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, I'd do it. But that's what everybody signed, that contract. So, they were aware that they could pull shit like that in England that they probably wouldn't be able to do in the States. But it's worth considering, isn't it? Whether there's a union involved, and
sure.
that's gonna affect things. I mean, obviously unions are there to protect workers and maintain pay and conditions, but the trade-off is it's not an easy path to get into. It's not an open door. But an unregulated workforce isn't great either. So somewhere in between. But do consider whether there is a union, because obviously that's going to affect how you can work, or whether indeed you can work at all.
Yeah, it can be a good news, bad news thing.
Yeah, and it's a tough thing to get into. It's like you can't get a job unless you're in the union, but you can't get in the union unless you've got a job. It's like the experience thing, isn't it? It's kind of tough.
The old catch-22.
Yeah, and just look out generally for cons and being taken advantage of. I mean, I have seen like subscription sites and services that take payment, in order to sort of give you the secret, way in, and they can slip you the call sheets first or the listings of which studios are getting hired. In my experience, that's all just bullshit. Do you know, I was thinking about this with the with the current crisis at the moment. What would be a really, really profitable hustle would be if you worked in a supermarket and your job was stacking the shelves. If you knew when the toilet roll delivery came in, you could charge people like $100 to be able to text them and go, the toilet roll's going out in 10 minutes. And that's when you roll down to the supermarket and pick up your loo rolls. Do you know what I mean? That kind of thing. I'm not suggesting anyone do that, but that seemed like if you were that way inclined, that would be a very profitable hustle. Who would have thought that someone would pay $100 just to find out when the loo rolls are going down? Well, that's pretty much what some of these subscription things I've seen before, where people will pay money to be, to get the inside scoop, and it's like I don't believe that works. Typically, the people, if you're making a movie tomorrow, if you're in charge of it, you're a showrunner, you already know who you're going to call tomorrow. Do you know what I mean? You've already got your bullet, like me or you. If something terrible happens, you already know who your best friend is you're going to call, and then you work down your list of, that's how it works. It's like you've got to understand that people work in their relationships, who they know, who they trust, who they've used before, who recommends. You're unlikely to walk in as a complete unknown, even with any information you think you may have, that's gonna swing it for you. At best you might find out and apply, but I think there's a lot of people making money pretending that they've got the inside scoop, and they fucking haven't. So be aware of that.
And I've heard of shops also that have interns, but the interns pay to rather than getting paid. You know, you have paid and unpaid internships. I've heard of places that actually have their interns pay for the privilege of being an intern somewhere, and you know, to me, that's a red flag.
Yes. Okay. So I'm going to say this now, but I should have said this at the top, basically. So I'm going to go through a bunch of points that we were talking about how to get work in an effects shop, and I'll say at the end, you know, we'll go through at the end what we think are good ways to actually do that, but let's just kick off with a bunch of things to be aware of before you start, just because you need to be looking in the right direction and thinking about the right things, because there are some key elements that will affect things outside of be really good, have excellent work in your folio, and show up for a face-to-face meeting at the studio. That's obviously the best way to try and get some work. But before you do that, let's just go through a sort of a checklist of things that are worth discussing in some detail, because I think they're very important points. Okay.
Well, if you've got a meeting with somebody, I think it's important for you to be early, because showing up on time, you're still late.
Yes, is that military thing, isn't it? 15 minutes prior of you know, if I meet you at 10, you know, you would, if two military guys were meeting, they'd both be there at 9:45. I don't know if that's true, but it sounds like a good thing. Punctuality means a lot, especially if someone's got a tight schedule. You need to build some wiggle room.
Absolutely,
and that happens even when you're working. Actually, you've got a makeup starting at 4 a.m. You know, I know it takes me an hour to get there. I don't leave at 3 a.m. I leave at 20 to 3 because I need to get there.
And you got to Scotty factor everything.
Oh, what? Sorry?
You have to Scotty factor everything too. You know, Mr. Scott from Star Trek. You know, if you know it's going to take you an hour to get from your house to where you need to be, give yourself an hour and a half, because you never know. Maybe the bridge will be out, or there'll be a herd of cattle in the way. Something. Tornado. You get a flat tire.
I've not heard the Scotty thing before. I like that.
You know, give yourself some pad. Yeah, the Scotty factor worked great because, you know, he said, "Scotty, I need warp power in 5 minutes." You know, if Scotty knows it's gonna take 2 hours to do something, he'll tell him it takes 4 hours, and then if he gets it done in 3, he's a hero.
Yeah, well, that's a little trick in any makeup thing, isn't it? It's like, oh, you know, if you know you've got a 10-minute job, say 15, and then do it in 8. Because if you're 1 second slow, they hate you. But if you're, you know, 5 minutes early,
every time an AD comes to me and asks me if I'm how much longer it's going to be, I said, every time you ask me that, I'm going to add 30 minutes.
You can get some terrifying ADs. Not normally second or thirds, but first ADs. Oh my God, like sharks.
They sure can be. They can be your best friend or an enemy.
So I know, we got any more to add to that? That's just, I think it's a pretty extensive list, but I get the feeling this was quite a harsh, preachy episode, and probably didn't win me a lot of friends. I don't know. It's probably not going to win us a lot of friends.
I still like you.
Thanks, man. But I just think it's one of those episodes that it's one of the harder things about this kind of work is that when it comes to, you know, people giving you money for stuff, that's when the gloves come off. That's when it's not the same as people saying nice things to you on Facebook. And so I wanted it to be a very sort of stark kind of like, look, you know, be aware that this is something you need to worry about and all that kind of stuff.
Well, it's fun. It's fun to do. We love doing it, but bottom line is it's still a business, and it has to be approached as one. I mean, it's the entertainment industry, but it's still a business.
It's a weird one.
It's supposed to be fun, but it isn't always.
Yeah. As well, I mean, the thing I've noticed is I mean, it is exciting, and you watch the thing, you know, when it's on and it's done and it's lovely, but it's such a big machine. There's so much money at stake. You know, like if you've got a film unit in a location for 2 days, they have to get all that stuff done in that location because the whole unit is going to upstick and move somewhere else. And that could be to a different country or, There's a huge amount of expense built into all of this stuff, and so for you to eat up a bunch of time because of something that went wrong that is your responsibility to avoid, that's when there's the stark difference between people who say, oh, it's amazing, you should be on Face Off. That's not there when someone who's paid 20-30 grand to a department is going, this is fucking us up, this is costing a fortune, why is this not working? And ultimately it'll break down to something you didn't do that you should have done, and it's like that's where your head's got to be. So they need the right people in the right places to do this kind of stuff, and not everyone can do it. I mean, I watch the job I was just on a couple of weeks ago, the makeup designer. She's incredible, and she's got such a cool team of people, and she's built for, she's obviously an accomplished makeup artist herself, but she can do what not everyone can, which is actually run the department, deal with production, defend the budget when people are trying to put a squeeze on things, because everyone's always trying to save money. Fight your corner. Why hasn't this been done? Why haven't you paid that person? All that kind of stuff. That's not everyone can do that, and so not everyone is built to be a designer and can do things. And I don't have a problem with that. I know that's not me. I'm happy to work under a good designer, but I see that, and you realise that there's things at stake. It's just a movie, it's just a TV show. When you see it after the fact, it doesn't seem that important, but at that time when there's 150 people standing around with really expensive equipment in a location they've paid a fortune to be in, with actors that cost a lot of money, and it's a dramatic scene, all of this stuff matters, and the thing doesn't work because you forgot to bring your glue, or you couldn't be asked to clean your brushes, or do you know what I mean? It just
And suddenly, they only have that location for one day.
Yeah, you've got to get it done.
It's so important to be a problem solver.
Yeah, but you got to solve problems.
This isn't
in that
working
situation.
on set. How do we fix this?
Yeah, and here are your options. It's hard. There's a lot of pressure, and it's because of the amount of money involved in producing stuff, like properly produced stuff. When you're on a unit and there's 20 trailers and all this kind of stuff, it's huge. We did this thing, and it was in Pall Mall, which is just in front of Buckingham Palace. There was a unit there for about a week, and it's like, how much does it cost to block out that much space? Do you know what I mean? It's like, that's just one location. That, and it's a huge undertaking, and I think people just have to be aware that it's a frivolous thing to see a TV show on the screen, but in its making, it's very serious, and it never ceases to amaze me how important and serious something is. And then the second it's in the can and it's done, everyone just moves on and forgets about it. It's like it never happened. But you can't let that instruct how you approach each job. You've got to be on the ball every time, and it's quite stressful. The hours are long precisely because of it, and the days are long, and there's so much expected from everyone. It's not an easy thing to do at all, and to be creative under that pressure, on demand for somebody else. It's a magical industry. It really is, but you kind of need to see it up close to realize how brutal it can be as well.
You're working for that $36 an hour.
You really do. But I love it. It's magic to me. But
it's the most fun I've ever had professionally.
I think it says the most fun I had with my clothes on.
Well, that too.
Oh dear. Well, I think that's all I can squeeze out of this one. I'm actually bored of hearing my own voice now. So thank you for listening. I waffled on. I attacked this one like an attack dog. But we
got almost an hour and a half.
We have. I didn't mean to go on that long, but well, get in touch. If you have questions, you can email us at stuartandtodd@gmail.com, and check out our new website, battleswithbitsofrubber.com.
Woohoo!
Yeah.
And our YouTube channel.
Oh, yeah, our YouTube channel. Yeah, just look us up, Battles with Bits of Rubber. We're there. We're sticking some more tutorials on. I've got some requests. I mean, we because obviously at the time of recording, things were a little quiet on the work front. So I put a post up saying, if anyone's got any questions, get in touch. We can maybe do some video responses. And this is sort of one of them, because a few people have asked about this. But I've written down and shot some video of a few other questions as well. And over the next week or two, I'm going to be putting those together. But we might do some more audio responses to them, simply because there's a lot less editing and work involved. But some things do require, the visual imagery, so some things do have to be video. But yeah, please do keep the questions coming in, because that is fuel to our fire.
And we will talk to you all soon.
Magic, man. Thank you very much, Todd.
It was a gas.
Okay, mate. Take care. Cheers, man.
You can get in touch through our Facebook page or email us at stuartandtodd@gmail.com. Check the show notes for more information. If you enjoyed this episode, tell someone else and help us grow by sharing it on social media. Thanks for listening.